Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So today I wanted to talk about energetic healing, psychic healing, whatever term you're comfortable with, uh, and how I got into it and my approach to it and what I've learned about it, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So to start with, I was born with the ability to sense other people's pain and to instinctively do something about taking the pain away. I think that's partly my empathic nature that allowed me to sense those things. And then the exercises that the spirits had me doing when I went to bed at night somehow helped me with doing something about what the pain was that I found. And I know I started doing that about the age of 4, from what my mother tells me. And I didn't know what I was doing, of course, because it was just a natural instinctive process that I had. But I remember with my brother one time when he was sitting in the back seat of the car with me, and he had a bad headache, and I had him lay on my lap in the car, and I gently rubbed his temples and made him all relax and and get all, calm, and he fell asleep and his headache went away, which I thought was pretty awesome because, I liked taking away people's pain. That's just one of those things. This is a very satisfying thing to do. And my father, he had a condition from when he was in World War II. His ship was blown out, or I guess sunk by kamikazes, and he had a lot of shrapnel in his leg and his knee, and every so often his knee would just completely give out on him, standing, walking or whatever, and it would just go thump, and then he'd be on the ground. And I actually worked on his knee, and he was amazed at how much better his knee felt. And so he told me once that I had magic hands. And I've mentioned my childhood briefly here and there, and it was a pretty horrific childhood. This is actually the only positive thing my father ever said to me throughout my entire life. And I find it interesting that I've taken those few words that, you have magic hands, and run with them, as it were, becoming first an energetic healer for about 15 years, and then becoming a massage therapist, and then combining massage and energetic healing in my work with my clients, and magic. And all these things have to do with the same kind of energy. So, like I said, I didn't know much of what I was doing, and it was just sort of, whenever I knew somebody was hurting, I tried to make them feel better. Then in about 1970, somewhere between 70, 71 in there, and before I got pregnant with my son, he was born in August of 72, so trying to remember some of these exact times is difficult for me, except by relationship to, I got married in 69, my son was born in 72, so there's like a 3-year period in there where a lot of stuff happened. So this was during that period, and we went on, me, my husband at the time, 2 of our friends, and I think Gary, who was with us too during that trip. And we were going across Canada at this point in the trip. We'd gone across the United States and gone back up to Canada, and we were going back through Canada and then back to the States. We were making some kind of a circuit kind of thing. And so this happened in Toronto, Ontario, and we were spending some time at a local hostel. I can't remember how much it cost. It was pretty inexpensive. A lot of times they were basically free in exchange for you doing yard work or, doing the dishes and all this kind of stuff. And so we were spending a couple days there. And this is one of the things that happened when we were there. There was this elderly gentleman. Well, I thought of him as elderly. I'm not sure what his age was. I was pretty young at the time, so he could have been in his 40s, and I might have thought he was elderly, but it seems like he had gray hair. And he was a psychic healer. And there was a woman or girl or whatever who was staying at the hostel who had a really bad toothache. So this is the first time I actually witnessed somebody doing energetic healing to get rid of a specific kind of pain that wasn't me, because I'd never actually met anyone else who did that. So I watched him very closely when he was working on this young girl, and he would be, focusing on her tooth. I think her tooth was on this side because I visualize it mirror image on the other side. And I was asking him a lot of questions, trying to understand what he was doing, and he was telling me that he was seeing the pain in her jaw and her tooth as a bright light, and then he was pulling that light out of her face and out of her tooth, and then, getting rid of it. So I was quite fascinated because it made it feel better. He did tell her that she still needed to go to the dentist because she had, tooth decay, and she needed to have something done to the tooth, and the pain would go away for a period of time, sometimes a couple of hours, sometimes less, and he would do it again. And so I was asking him every question I could think of at the time, wanting to know what he was doing, and he actually introduced me to the idea of the chakras outside of the exercises that spirits had me do when I was little. I mean, then I did not know what they were or what they were called. I just, did what I was told, putting energy up and trying to feel them and all this other stuff. So I was very fascinated by it. And since this was in the late 60s, early 70s, it was more the New Age approach to the chakra system, which is one that a lot of people use still, where you have the rainbow colors going from the deep red all the way up through the ultraviolet and the white, coming up the spine, and each chakra had a different energy focus, etc. to it. I now know that there's different chakra systems out there, and that the colors of the rainbow wheel, although they can still work and there's nothing wrong with using them, there's a lot of other nuances that you can learn, and not every culture sees the colors the same way, and not all the chakras are in the same place. This is one of the reasons why we've talked about the hara just below the belly button is actually what the New Age system would consider the solar plexus center, which they place up here in the solar plexus. But that's actually the center of the chakra system. I'm sure there is also a chakra in the solar plexus center, but I think it's more of a minor chakra, like the ones in the hands and so forth, where the hara is more of a major chakra. Now that's a matter of personal experience and taste or whatever. But anyway, so I asked him lots of questions, and he explained to me about seeing the pain at the light and pulling it out and, getting rid of it and stuff. And then we were off doing other things. So a year later, so this was still before I was pregnant, so this must have been 71 then, so meeting that guy was probably in 70. I was back in Canada, and I met the woman who was with me at the time, Yvonne, and got connected back with her in Vancouver, British Columbia. And when I, saw her, the shared memory that we had of this guy sort of came back, and she had a pain in her shoulder. So she's talking about this really excruciating pain she had in her left shoulder, and I reminded her about this guy who, made the pain go away when we were in the hostel in Toronto, and asked if I could try that, and she said sure. And so I grabbed her arm and her shoulder and closed my eyes and tried to get inside of her body where the pain was and visualize the light and as a pain and try and make it go away. And while I was in the middle of doing this, all of a sudden she walked away, which was a shock to my system. I was like, what? What the heck is going on? And I was somewhat confused and disoriented, and I said out loud, what happened? She said, oh, the pain went away. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. That's so good. I'm so happy. So I was very pleased. So the next morning comes around, and I can't get out of bed. I have absolutely no energy whatsoever. I am like a zombie. And it's like having the worst case of flu with no symptoms. That complete and total body malaise where you can't even hardly lift your head and your hand. And I'm laying there, and every time I'm trying to figure out why do I feel like this, I see her shoulder. So after about 6 hours of trying to ignore the message, I finally said, okay, fine. So clearly I did something wrong when I took her pain away, and I hurt myself, so I better not do that again until I know what I'm doing. And ironically, at the time, I looked in the phone book, in Vancouver, British Columbia's phone book, the area phone book, and in it there was the Psychic Society of Vancouver. And I was like, well, okay then. So I called them up on the phone. And this guy answers the phone, and I told him what happened, and that, I felt that I probably had done it to myself, and I wanted to know if I could learn from someone, if there was someone out there who could teach me how to do this so that I wasn't going to injure myself. And I turned out I was actually talking to the healer that was a member of the society, and it was a spiritualist church, I think, that this was happening at. They did seances and mediumship and all this other stuff too. Not your standard kind of church. So we made arrangements for me to go and meet with him. And I walked in. I'd never met him or any of these people before. And without telling me anything at all the first time, he just had me, touch his back and touch his body and see if I sensed any differences, changes in temperature or feelings or whatever. And whenever I did, I would stop and I would tell him what I felt, and he asked me what I thought it meant, and I would tell him what I thought it meant, but I wasn't sure. And he never gave me feedback at all when I was doing this. He just went through his entire body, and then he took me downstairs to the meeting. There's all these other people there. And he announced to them that he had tested me, and I definitely had the healing gift, and that I had accurately identified everything in his body, including the fact that he was diabetic. Because I'd sensed something around the pancreas. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I did sense something that was there. And he went through and listed all the things that I had said and how that correlated to his body, which was certainly a surprise to me. But I was pretty excited. I mean, like, yay, I have healing power. And so then I trained with him in his particular style of energy work. And one of the things I have figured out throughout this is the problem that I had with my friend Yvonne was that I had put my energy into her, and she had left with my energy because I hadn't extracted my energy back out. So it became an automatic rule that if I was working on someone, they could not stop the contact. That was entirely up to me because I had to make sure I'd gotten all my energy out as much as possible before I took my hands away. So keeping contact with the person I was working on became rather important. And he also was using the same kind of chakra system as the guy I met in Toronto. And so that sort of reinforced that whole idea. And then after that, he says it's practice. And if you use it, you'll get better. And if you don't use it, you won't. And it'll just eventually go away. And whatever I did with it then was up to me. So that started me on about 15 years of doing just energy work on people. And I certainly learned a lot about energy and about people and, how they felt and what I could do. And I had some pretty remarkable cases, like the one when I got my staff that I shared in my video about how I got my staff, which was definitely one of those highlight. Everything in Texas was like that, though. It was all amazingly and powerful and never to be repeated again quite as well sort of experiences. But the upshot or the condensed understanding of all of that is what I want to try and share with you so that you start from a more complete place than I did, since, like I said, I didn't know anything about what I was doing. So the first thing you need to be able to do Well, the very first thing is to be able to separate your energy from other people and to be able to ground your energy, and then be able to get energy from other places, not from yourself. We've talked about how when you're doing magic in the beginning, a lot of times people use their own personal energy to do that. If you do that as a healer, you're going to make yourself sick, and that is a bad way to approach it. There are some cultures that's how they approach it. The Native American healers that I've met over the years, they seem to have that particular mindset where they take on the illness of the person that they're healing, and then they have to heal themselves or have someone else heal them. And I just don't think that that's a viable model for your own particular health, and it works just as well not to do it that way. So I would prefer not to do it that way, and so I don't. So understanding energy and being able to do that kind of stuff is sort of a basis for pretty much everything we do when it comes to energy and magic. Because if you don't have that awareness of your own energy, your own thoughts, you can't tell if you're picking up from someone else. You're projecting everything onto them. And so then you can't actually help someone. What you're doing is you're projecting into them and helping yourself in some weird way. And not necessarily getting to the root of their problem. So that's number one. And the next thing is to be able to sense the energetic vibrational rate of the chakras in the other person. And that's how I like to work with it. I don't want to go and like blast somebody's third eye open so they suddenly have visions all over the place. I consider that the dangerous thing to do because it makes somebody unbalanced. And the point of this kind of energetic healing is to do what you can to balance the individual you're working on. Because in my experience, life, the life energy, the life force, it has a desire to be well and healthy. It's like it's an automatic need. It wants to move in that direction of more health and better health and better integration of the different systems in the body. So if you can help the body get into that state or experience that state, then the person's more likely to get well. And I consider that what I'm doing when I'm doing that kind of healing is I'm allowing a process to begin through my intervention, but then the person who has whatever it is and their body system and energy is the one that takes over that process and makes them well. So that is the first thing that I would do when I was doing this particular style of healing. I would usually have somebody laying on their stomach on the floor or in a chair with their back free so that I could go up and down their spine with my hands. And then I would first, without interfering, like with that breathing exercise we talked about last week, seeing where things are at without trying to change them. And I would go and I would sense, what level of energy this particular energy center had, and find some energy centers that were blocked or weren't working at all, and others that were blown open and working too much. And then I would go about trying to balance the chakras and the energy centers so that each one was on the same level. So bringing up the ones that were dimmed too much and weren't working right, and then dampening the ones that were excessively excited and shooting out all over the place. Because balance and integration is what brings health to people. You probably have seen this, I'm sure, where you met somebody who's like all in their head. They're all up here. They've got all kinds of ideas and notions and spiritual awakenings and blah, 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 but can't do a dish to save their lives, or don't know how to sweep a floor, or don't know how to interact with normal people, or whatever. They're unbalanced. And actually, when I lived in Santa Cruz, I could literally see that with people walking down the street. Some of them looked like they were about 3 feet off the ground because they were so completely ungrounded. They had no connection to the planet at all. They were way up here in the atmosphere, in the ether, and just completely disconnected from everything, which I consider a lack of health. I mean, balance is important. So that would be my reasoning for that. And sometimes I used colored light. What I decided, like, there's a lot of different theories about which color does which thing. People have their own opinions. This pink is good for your heart, or this pink is good for your bones. You can do research and you'll find all kinds of stuff. So instead of trying to figure out who was right about what I would do would be to breathe in that rainbow colored light and then breathe it out into them, and then just sort of program that energy to go wherever it was needed. So if this part needed some green energy and this part needed some pink energy or blue energy or yellow energy or whatever, the light would be free and the colors would be free to go and energize whatever it was that was happening in the person. And that works out pretty well, because that way I'm not dependent upon my understanding or my ego to decide what's the best approach. This way I'm leaving it up to energetic forces, their higher spirit guardian, their own karma, or their decisions or choices about what's going to happen to them. And you can't always heal everyone. Even with some of the amazing things that I've done, there's been other people I haven't been able to help. And that is a difficult thing for someone who's seriously into healing to learn how to accept. That not everyone either wants to or is willing to get better, or your idea of better. Since we are not always omnipotent and know all of the different factors that are going into something, we can't know for sure what are all the different influences that are around that person. For example, a concrete example, as a massage therapist in Medford, I worked on a woman who had been in a really bad car accident and was she was in huge levels of pain. I mean, it was, she was like, you could hardly touch her without her practically getting ready to scream. And I actually got her started back into a place where she wasn't in pain all the time. And the first thing she did when she felt better was to go out and injure herself more. And it took me a while to understand exactly what it was. She was seriously battered. She was in a really toxic relationship with her husband, and he beat the living daylights out of her on a regular basis until she got so injured that she was in so much pain and he was afraid to touch her. And my assumption, which could be wrong, but that's what my conclusion was, that her need to be safe from him overrode her desire to be well, because she couldn't leave him. And there wasn't anything I could do about it. So that's it's one of those things that it's difficult to accept when other people are willing to do that to themselves, and you in your mind can see what they're doing and know how much better it would be if only they could do something else. But people are where they are, and you can't change or impose your will upon them to make them do something, whatever it is that they're in. They have to, if they can get support from society and stuff like that, but they have to want it, and be willing to go through the process of healing and everything else. So that's just sort of a warning, if you decide to get into doing energetic healing, to remember that it isn't up to you in particular. It's up to forces that are around the other person and their influences and their state of mind and everything else. Of course, we know about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where somebody makes someone else sick in order to get attention. And Munchausen syndrome is where the person makes themselves sick in order to get attention. And I think on a spiritual level, there's a similar kind of condition. And that for some people, that's what that is. Going from healer to healer to healer, trying to get well while they're trying not to get well. So anyway, so that's part of it. Interesting thing happened after doing this for years. I heard about a healer in Vancouver, British Columbia, and she had herself set up in an apartment, did by donations only, and she was there. It was like a full-time job for her, and she was there doing energetic healing on people. And I decided that I had this thing in my head that I had to be worthy. That's another problem. I had to be worthy of being healed in order to be able to be healed. And I decided after this many years of and people that I had helped that maybe somehow now I was actually worthy and I could go get a healing myself, which is kind of funny that I had that in my head. But hey, we're all dealing with something, right? And I went to see her, and so I got to experience the energetic healing from being the person sitting in the chair and having her putting her hands on me, which was just incredible. I mean, she was wonderful. And she commented on the bright spirits that I brought with me, which was the first time I'd actually heard someone say that out loud. So that was kind of cool. And a year later, I went back and saw her again, and she didn't remember my name. But when I sat in her chair and she started to doing the energetic work on me, she recognized the spirits that I brought with me and said, "Oh, you're the one who brings all the bright spirits with her wherever she goes." So I thought that was pretty cool. It sort of validated that, okay, so that was nice. So let me think. The different ways that I've worked with the chakras over the years, the idea is that the lower three chakras are the physical body. You've got your will to live. You've got your desire to procreate and to share your energy. And you have your power or energetic self, allowing you to do whatever. And then the upper three chakras are what they consider the spiritual chakras. So you've got your throat chakra, which is your ability to speak words that have impact on other people so that you can be understood when it's used for good. Your third eye, which allows you to see things that are not ordinarily visible to everyone, either into the past, into the future, into someone's heart. It's spirits, being able to see spirits and energies and entities and so forth. And then you have the crown chakra, which is the thing that is at the top that opens you up to other levels of energy. And then you get into like your chakras that are out in the spirit plane and the chakras that are below in the earth plane kind of thing. And you can get very complicated with it if you want. So if I don't know for sure what to do with somebody, if I'm really at a loss, one of the things I can do is work with the heart center, because the heart center flows down into the body chakras and tries to connect them, and flows up into the spirit chakras, and it's sort of like the center of everything. So you've got the energy coming down the spine and then going up the spine, and you can feel it as an energetic thing where it's coming up and then going back down. Sort of makes like a figure eight of energy as it comes up your spine and goes into your heart and then comes up through the front where your chakras are in the front of yourself, then goes back down your back and then out into the front and back down the front and back into the back. At least that's the energy flow that I feel. So working with the heart center is a safe thing to do, because the heart center is all about integration, not emotions but feelings, true feelings. It's one of the things I understood from doing the chakra work was that the solar plexus or the hara is where emotions sort of sit, and it's kind of like you're taking a big huge emotion and throwing it on a pan of heated water or heated rocks or whatever, and it creates this steam of energy that's going in every direction, and it's confusing and it doesn't have like a direction. So that would be like anger, rage, not a positive type of anger, but a confusing thing. Pit in your stomach, butterflies in your stomach, anxiety, all that kind of stuff kind of sits in there. And then if you can take that energy and pull it up into the heart center, then you can raise it up to the level where it becomes a feeling instead of an emotion, and a feeling gives you direction. It gives you purpose. It shows you a path to follow in order to get whatever it is that's unsettling down there done, fixed. So you don't have to be a Reiki master to do energetic healing. You don't have to do quantum healing or any of the other stuff that's out there. You can do it without that. I'm a Reiki master, and that was very easy for me to adapt to because of the years and years of working with energy. So I kind of flowed into that fairly well. But Reiki is a specific kind of healing where a group of angelic beings have agreed to transmit their energy through the hands of whoever has been given the symbols that they agreed to use in order to give people energy and healing, stuff like that. And again, it's about not doing it yourself but letting it flow. So like in my massage practice, I think I've explained this before, where I have energy rooting down from my table into the floor, into the earth, to take any negative energy that my client might have down into the planet to cleanse it. I pull energy up from the earth and from the air, and then I feed that through me into my client when I'm doing my work, and then it goes back down into the ground. So I'm not using my energy, I'm using universal life force energy, earth energy, and letting it, I'm a conduit. So that way I don't get sick. Just always good. I don't end up like I was that first time, stuck in bed, unable to move. So it's probably enough to get you started on the idea of this, and I'm sure there's lots of other things we could talk about. So please feel free to send me questions about this, and if we want to do another video on the subject, I can use your questions to kind of like figure out which way to go with it and what to focus on next time or in a future video. So until then, this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.